Eastern Time. It's LinkedIn Live, Hour of Empower. The word of the day is entrepreneur. Chat is wide open. We depend on chat to direct us and make us as relevant as we can to give you as many quality, valuable takeaways that you can use from this show, and gives everybody a chance to introduce each other to each other. So proud to have Megan Riley with us today. I had the wonderful opportunity of having a Zoom call last week and got to know Megan so much better than I could have without the call. And based on that, I thought Megan would be a great aligned individual, especially with the topic of today, which is entrepreneur, of which myself and Megan are pretty experienced at. And I think, I not only do I think, I believe Megan will be a quality benefit to you all. Get to know her. If there's alignment, reach out, connect. And with that said, Megan, why don't you share a little bit with the audience?
Well, thanks for having me, Donald. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate the chance to do this. I think your consistency in this, speaking of entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship requires consistency, and the way that you have continued to do this show on a regular basis is it's a masterclass in consistency for sure, and it's a great example of the power of consistency. So I'm very happy to be here today, and I love this topic too. I was an entrepreneur from the get-go. When I was little, I used to come home and put on a business suit from school. I'd take off my school clothes and I'd put on a houndstooth business suit, and I would pretend to play business at home. Yes, yes. So it's always just been something I've been interested in. I like the idea of creating something and building something. And I really see, entrepreneurship as using who you are to make your world better, to make the world around you better. And I think the best entrepreneurs are those that are building something that's true to who they are and that resonates with them in some way, or they have some sort of a history with it, or they have some sort of special interest in it, or just is some way innate or natural for them, because entrepreneurship can be challenging, and it requires hours, and it requires consistency, and it requires effort and hard work. But when you really love what you're doing, or you believe in what you're doing, or you care about what you're doing, you don't mind so much if you're doing it late at night or early in the morning, or around the clock. And I think that's kind of a sign to me that I know, if someone's in the right lane, if they really love it. And entrepreneurship has given me a lot in my life. My sister started actually our company Tippy Toes in college, and I joined her soon after, and we've built it from a part-time college job to now an international franchise brand, and we've got about 40 franchises in the US. And it's a typical entrepreneur story in that we had no idea what we were doing. We didn't plan this. We didn't know where we were headed. And I think that's the truth for a lot of entrepreneurs in the beginning. But the key is being an entrepreneur is you keep trying. You have an appetite for trying and figuring things out and trying again. And there's so much within us that if we can tap into it, if we can figure out our specific tool set and our skills and our talents and find a way to use those and leverage them, it's really special. So I love this topic. I could go on and on and on about this, but I will take a breath so that we can go back and forth a little bit. But I love this topic. I think it's important. And I also will say, and then I'll pass it over to you, is that I think that even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, I think there's things about an entrepreneur mindset that can very much benefit every single person, whether you want to have your own business or not. There's certain things about an entrepreneur that if you can apply them to any other parts of your life, I think it can be really beneficial.
Yeah, and I'm so I admire what you've been able to do based on the foundation that you built on. Whether it was early and being more business professional, whether it was collaborating with your sister on something that no one had an idea where it would eventually go to. And I think they say belief is belief faith is the belief in the invisible. And
Mhm.
when you believe you're going to meet people you have yet to know, learn things you have yet to learn, and include that in your future business plan instead of here's where we are, here's where we're going to go from here. And it's a
Mhm.
people thing. I also think you've got to love the road less traveled. You've got to delight in no one being there with you or for you, but they're also not against you. And there's
Mhm.
a saying, if your why's big enough, you'll figure out the how to. And that keeps
Mhm.
people in the game because, in the
Mhm.
old days with generals, they burn the boats and say, we either win or we perish. There's no way back.
Mhm.
In most cases, entrepreneurs have signed everything over and they don't have a choice. Real quick, when I started my business, I put my car up and me and my wife were just married. And I said to Ann, I said, if it doesn't work out, we got to take a bus home. so, so, that gave us a motivation to make it work. And when with your
Yeah.
people that trust you, that you trust, magic happens. So before we go
Mhm.
too much further, let me go through the wonderful audience we have here. So Debbie is here. Debbie was here the other day, knocked it out of the park for the first time. Debbie's just a great individual. Look forward to having Debbie back. She's in northern Wisconsin. She's an entrepreneur. She lives there and down in Florida the other half of the year. So thank you, Debbie.
She's got it
Paul,
figured out. That
yeah,
is the way to do it. She's
she's
got
got
it figured out.
Paul says hello. Great to meet you, Megan. On video, always great to see you. He calls me Grandpa out of respect. Thank you, Paul. Actually, I've got a call with
Hi,
Paul later.
Paul.
Natalie's here, just a wonderful lady, great artist, does some beautiful paintings. I've been watching her posts lately. So connect with Natalie. Russ is here. Russ has his own show that I'm thinking about coming on. Great to have you, Russ. Got your message yesterday. Oh, Natalie knows Russ. That's great. Oh, look who's here. We got Dennis here, who was here for his first time the other day. Dennis has been an entrepreneur for 46 years, same heating and cooling business. Wonderful gentleman. Nice to be growing and knowing. Week done, and sounds like you're still having fun. He's always rhyming. That's his calling card. Kelly, who's been with me and the show for 8 months, just a strong anchor, quality CMO, high level leader in corporate and now flourishing on LinkedIn and what she's doing. Paul says entrepreneurship for me has been about creating my own rules and owning my time. Owning your time is truly the biggest flex. Makes sense. Thank you, Paul.
Mhm.
Russ, good morning. Great. Everybody's so
Hi,
happy
Russ.
to see each other. Hope you're all having an awesome day. And Maria's here, who's been here almost every day. Hey, all. With that, we got a wonderful crowd here. And, why don't you share the moments that really made you happy to have chosen being an entrepreneur?
So it's interesting that you asked that because there have been different parts of my life that it served me in different ways. From the get-go, I loved creating something. So in my early 20s, I loved just kind of being like, I don't know, let's do this. I don't know, let's figure this out. So I love that creativity because as you said earlier, being an entrepreneur, you're figuring it out. You're making it up as you go. There's not some blueprint you're following. There's not a job description. It's like, what am I going to do? So I loved that. And I loved being like, it could work. Oh, I see what they need. Oh, they're asking for this. I loved that season of my life. Pre-kids, college student, that kind of thing. Early 20s, newlywed, that life was really fun. I loved my flexibility all along. I loved, to be honest, if I needed to get my hair done, I love not having to ask for time off to get my hair done during the day. I have always valued that of I think Paul said it as owning your own time. I totally agree. That feels wonderful. So there was that season that I really appreciated that. And then my early 30s, I had some babies and I, it's really the same thing as far as owning your own time, but I wanted to be at home, still running my business. And so I did. And we didn't ever have help around the house. I did everything and I wanted that. And I was homeroom mom and I was picking kids up and back and forth from preschool and then elementary school. And, I wanted that. And so that it afforded me to be able to do that and to have my hours be whatever my hours needed to be. And so that for me has always been really special. Now in this phase of life, my kids are a little bit older. They're 6, 8, and 10. And what I love about it now is the no limits feeling I have around entrepreneurship, because um, and the COO and owner of Tippy Toes, and that's where I spend a lot of my time. But I also have started a podcast and I've started speaking, and this entrepreneur mindset and entrepreneurial tendencies I have are still there. So Tippy Toes is growing and humming and great and amazing, but I still have desires to create something new and to speak to people. And that's why I love speaking. That's why I love my podcast. That's why I love working with other groups that inspire me, because I love just like what could be next. I love that feeling, of not knowing what could be next, and not knowing, I don't know what it might look like in 10 years. I don't know where my hours might be spent. And I love that feeling. So it's kind of been along my journey, it served me in different ways. I would say the main thing is the flexibility that gives me, but I also love now kind of just like what could be next. Who knows? I love those things about it. What about you?
Yeah, I believe, well, I only had one job when I was 15. I worked in a grocery store while I was in high school for a couple of years. And I graduated the top of the Packers, so yeah, and the buggy getters, and never got a job again, and just felt to your point, it was limitless. Even when I was 9, 10 years old, if it snowed, I grab a shovel and start making a quarter a driveway. If it's the summertime, I'd be looking for, there was always ways to make money by being helpful and valuable to others and being the one to ask, knocking on doors and saying, hey, can I shovel your snow? So as you get older and wiser, you feel that not only do you have maybe the chance for financial freedom, but time freedom. And you're right. How many great ideas do people have in companies, and they're stifled, minimized, marginalized? By the time it comes out, you don't even get ownership for it. And everybody goes back to there because they don't know any different. I believe two doors, and one says owner and one says worker. And everybody's got a choice which door they choose, and when they choose it. And I think if you don't choose early, that dependency starts becoming insecurity for leaving something when you have nothing and you're young. My first year in business, I made $50 a week after graduating college. And my whole family was, what are you doing this for? What'd you even bother getting us an education, right? It got you a job. And the next year I was living in a high rise, had a brand new car, owned a building, owned a restaurant next door at 23. And it just showed that for a year of taking criticism, really not knowing what you're doing, but not having an overhead that put any more pressure on you. And I think that's where today the benefit is, there's so many coaches, there's so many speakers, there's so many opportunities. You just take your core competency and engage everything else, and don't try to be a genius or an expert in everything. So before we go any further, I got some great comments here. I think Debbie started out with, literally, my being an entrepreneur has allowed us to create the life of our dreams. Wisconsin Door Country Resort Area of Arts and winter home amid palm trees in Florida. Now Debbie's doing so much with butterflies and so been down to Mexico, going down again next year. That's what entrepreneurs do. Because they have no limits, they have no reason to stop. I shared with everybody that at a dinner in Dallas one night, I ended up meeting a partner who turned out to be a billionaire. And for 12 years, we were together. And it was such a great ride, And I think it was just being available, accessible, and inviting that people attract themselves to you, and that's what you always want to do, is have a pull strategy, not a push strategy when you're communicating. Here's Russ comes back with, good morning, great. Here's Dennis again. Dennis says, thanks for big rings and hat and still caring and sharing your wisdom. For sure, Dennis. Natalie, business people don't just learn the nuts and bolts of running a business. They also learn how to care deeply and share that care with others. At the heart of every good business is a leader who really loves what they're doing and why they're doing it. Yeah, passion has to be an ingredient because you can overlook so many things if you're a believer. You know, you're one day away. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think Natalie's really right about really coming back to people. You know, so while like know your talents and know what you enjoy and everything, but also remember you're serving someone in some way, whether it's a product or software or whatever you're doing. People are going to be receiving what you're offering, and so never forgetting that. And you know, I believe in servant leadership and really like listen and be open. And I think caring about how your talents and your business or whatever land for people is important to have that awareness. And I think when you couple those things together, it's really when special things happen. And also I would say to that, like the other business side of that is also there's real strategy in pointing out what you solve for people. You know, I mean, the idea of really a business is you're solving a problem in some way. There's some issue that you're making better, you're creating an avenue, you're doing something. And so really helping people see how you are serving them is a part of it. I will say I've learned way more about parenthood and relationships and everything from being a business owner and experiencing that. Like the lessons in business translate all day long to life as a parent and as a person with relationships. And, you know, there's so many lessons that cross over. I think that's a really important point from Natalie.
Yeah, and I think partners are everything, or they're everything you shouldn't have. You know, unfortunately, I started with just me and my wife and our French poodle that we named Rocky after the mountains, and that was it, right? And it was fun. And we were in our 20s. You know, we didn't know from anything. You know, she was a substitute teacher. I had a real estate license, but you know, it was just going to work every day and doing things together and seeing each other talking to customers or putting stock up. You know, and what really I think makes a huge difference, it's yours. It's something you'll never get fired from. You might lose it because of not managing it well, but you never have to worry about a bonus. You never have to worry about, do I negotiate a raise? Does someone like me? Or hey, I had the best supervisor, now I got that person, and everything is changing, or the company's sold, and now I'm back where I started from. So, you know, today I believe everybody's working for themselves, no matter who's signing the check. You know, if you're not building something as an escape, you know, as something that you can tolerate, possibly what you're doing a little bit more, knowing it's a stepping stone to what you can have. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I think what you do here too is a great example of, I would say that it doesn't have to be like, I'm going to invent a product. It doesn't have to be this huge grand idea to start, you know, to try to figure out what it's going to be. Like I had no plans of being an international franchisor with no clue what I was doing. I didn't know what that was. If you said franchising, I would have been like, McDonald's? We're not McDonald's. What are you talking about? I don't understand it. So like, I didn't get it. And you don't have to get it. You know, to start your entrepreneur journey, you don't have to know everything down the road. You just have to figure out what you want to do right now, what skills you have that you can apply to maybe serve other people. Like, what does that look like? And I think sometimes it can feel, because I kind of go back and forth with this whole thing, is I feel like if you don't like the idea of being an entrepreneur, it's not good for you. Because like, if you like consistency of like, I'm going to go here, I'm going to punch a clock, and this is all I want to do, then there's a lot about being an entrepreneur that you probably are not going to like. That doesn't mean you can't develop your own voice. That doesn't mean you can't post on LinkedIn and engage with other people and just explore more of who you are. And kind of maybe that's all it ends up being, is you developing your voice for others to communicate with. Maybe that's where it ends. But I think it's worth exploring, and LinkedIn and your example here, and there's many other people on LinkedIn. I think it's such a great platform to test stuff and to figure stuff out and to put things out and to see what kind of sparks interest in you. And I think the key when we're talking about this is trying. Just start something, and nobody ever has all the answers, like ever. Nobody know, even if you've been in business for so many years, if you're going to start something new, you still don't know what's going to happen. And I used to think people did. Like when I was younger, I used to think, oh, they must know because they went to business school or because they've had this experience or whatever. And the truth is we live life because it's unpredictable, and there's change, and there's things that come unexpected. And I don't know, maybe there's a global pandemic. Well, that kind of turned everything on its head. Like you have to live life, and you've got to try. And so, I think this platform, LinkedIn in general, is such a fabulous place for people to play and to kind of test some stuff out and, find their version of what an entrepreneur is. Some people are going to be out there. I know somebody, Paul mentioned Sarah Blakely. Some people are going to be out there inventing products that become a household name. And then there's other people that are going to create a course that, 14 people are going to take, and it's going to be meaningful for those 14 people. Those are both entrepreneurs, and they're both doing great things, and they're both using things that are important to them to build something. And both people didn't know what they were doing when they started. So there's a lot of those similar things that no matter what kind of entrepreneur you become, there's some truths that are threaded throughout all of us. So kind of find that interesting.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful in so many ways. And when you look at it, an entrepreneur starting out has a huge advantage over an entrepreneur who's been doing it because they have no legacy. They have no baggage. They have nothing they're dragging from the past forward. When you're at a higher scale, you've got to be reaching with one hand while supporting and maintaining with the other hand, right? Everybody in the Army's got to travel at the same pace to really be effective. And, you've got to be a giver, not a taker, a waiter more than you are someone who doesn't have patience. And I think you make the most wonderful point, Megan, because you should start with where you are, with who you are, with what you have. And that's all you are ever going to have until you start doing things. And another point that I think is really very insightful and valuable and rich is people take LinkedIn and what they do on LinkedIn too seriously. They think they're a Shakespeare once they have to start creating content. And if they can't achieve that level, they feel like their whole audience, probably 2 or 3 people, will be disappointed. And I've found that let the numbers tell you how you're doing. Every day, same day results come in. You do a post, you see what it did, and you can decide, do I run it again or do I tweak it? And here's the beauty of it. Anything you did yesterday, you can repeat tomorrow while you took a break and did something new today. And just variety, just saying, because what's it cost? Nothing. And if no one sees it, no one was going to see it if you didn't do it. So you can always get +1 out of the situation. And I just, I do 3 posts a day, a LinkedIn Live. I do a poll. I tag all these people. I do a newsletter, and I've gotten it down to less than an hour, right? Because I repurpose everything. If it's a daily newsletter, I only have to tell you what's happening today, right? Who's the speaker tomorrow?
Yeah. And what's so great about that is that's not how it started for you, right? Like you didn't start it with 1 hour, but because you did the work and you tested it and you tried it and you layered things in and so like your first time of doing this, I'm pretty sure, you tell me if I'm wrong, but it didn't look the way it looks today.
It was 6 hours to create my first post because I never did one. But by doing one, and I've done a post every day for 3 years, every day I could shave a few minutes. And before, 6 hours went to like 2 overnight. And then 2 took a while. But if you do it every day and you understand the richness of going deeper with what you're doing, understanding what it means by the experience and the feedback you get. And I think LinkedIn and LinkedIn Live is a beautiful place to Megan's point, you throw it out there. And in this setting, we've got 30, 40 thought leaders who are raring to go with jumping in. And that kind of gives you some validation when 40 voices within an hour, because it's all about time efficiency on LinkedIn. Time in, time out, what'd you do, what'd you get? I tell people, log in, log out, write down what you did, write down why you did it, what was your expectation, and what did you get? I mean, it's simple, it's fast.
Yeah.
Accountability is something that takes the fun away from doing whatever you want, right? And being an entrepreneur isn't doing whatever you want. It's doing more than you would have for someone else when you're building their dream instead of your own. It's knowing why, Megan.
You touched on something there, I think that's important, that and that's about time. And that's one thing as an entrepreneur, you do have all the time in the world, which means you could waste it or you could put it in the right spot. And I think that's a make or break spot, so let's say everyone's going to try to be an entrepreneur. Well, there's going to be some people that never want to take action. That's going to cut, there's going to be some people, like, if you are not someone that's willing to take action without someone pushing you, then entrepreneurship is going to be a bit of a challenge. Then there's another spot that as you get further down the road, you've got to be able to manage your own time, because you have all the time in the world. If you're, in theory, if you don't have someone saying you have to do this, you have to give me this is the deadline. And so being able to manage your own time is an important part. Now, what's amazing in the world we live in today, there are so many things that you can implement to help you be successful at that, timers and apps and software, and there's ways that you can do that. But it's I would say that's and a topic to be mindful of for people that are, when you're talking about entrepreneurship, is make sure that you can manage your time and make sure that you can put your energy and your focus in the right places. One of the things I talk about when I speak is about the importance of your focusing on what's within your control and what's going to move you closer to your goal. That's it. If you don't have any control over it, then spinning your wheels, spending your energy, your brain power on it is a waste of time. Likewise, if you're putting your energy towards something that actually doesn't move you to where you want to go, it's just something, it's like just a thing to get done. Well, that's not really valuable either. And as an entrepreneur, I think it's very, very important to be clear on your focus. Where are you headed? And know that first and foremost, what are the goals? Where am I going? What is my purpose here? And then make sure you're acting on the things within your control that are going to move you closer to your goal. And I think that's the framework that I work off of when I talk with people, or it's definitely a part of my speech. But I think I practice it every day. And there are plenty of times when I'm like, oops, I'm off track. I'm worrying about something I don't have any say over, or I'm worrying about something that's not really going to get me another franchise sold, or it's not really going to get me XYZ. And so that focus and being mindful of your time, I think, as an entrepreneur is very important. And your example of what you've done here is so great, because you spent more time on it, but over time you continued to focus on what was within your control, which is how to make this better, how to make this stronger. And all of that was pushing your goal of developing this community. So, and growing and helping other people and serving other people. And it's just, you see it time and time again when you pay attention. People that do really well are clear on their focus and what they're trying to do.
Well, and I think what you really bring credit to is people who do it themselves, who launch it, who are the founders, because they had to work in the trenches. They had to do everything until they could afford to bring someone in. And they learned it the hard way, one day at a time. And I think too many, and that's why doing something every day makes so much sense, because by the time someone's about to forget about it, now they start re-engaging it. And now there's no pressure to get a whole scoop full. You can just get a little improvement in attitude one day. You can just decide, I'm going to expand my vocabulary. Little things done right compound. And the other big thing, if you're going to scale a business, is everything you do is going to duplicate through others. Right? As you're taking time off, they're thinking, hey, I'm taking time off. Nobody gets a parking space with their name. No, everybody empties their own trash at the end of the day. It was just a matter of not being elitist, And, what I really found out, and they think entrepreneurs have it made, even the ones that look like they have it made, is every day you have to earn your spot again, you know? And
Mhm.
that's why,
Mhm.
to Megan's point, I don't know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. I'm gonna do the best I
Mhm.
can, and if I'm ambitious, I'll probably review more, change more, but I think the secret to my success was always putting my family first. I never
Mhm.
went to school until my kids I walked them down. I was down the block. It was a great experience
Mhm.
for 20, 30 minutes, and I always was home for dinner, and because I always knew that was what was always gonna be there when nothing else
Mhm.
was. And businesses come and go, money comes, believe me. And if you're an entrepreneur, there's a saying, if you're not working on the edge, you're taking up too much room, and a lot you love being on the edge to see what's there and see how far you can go, and that's what it is you test your own limits and then you reflect on them. And if you do things in
Mhm.
a measured way, because the thing that will hurt
Mhm.
you is if you're out of balance, if
Mhm.
too hard, if you're not, every
Mhm.
day I would take, well, I was fortunate. I had my daughter, my son, and my son-in-law for 8 years working with me. And every day I'd have the opportunity to take my son out to lunch. And every afternoon I'd take
Mhm.
my daughter and we'd take a half-hour walk, just to catch
Awesome.
up.
Yeah.
And then at home, and my wife started the business with me for 8 years. So having that whole commitment and people showing up for
Mhm.
each other. And what we were fortunate is we expanded that family business to people who weren't family, but treated them like family. I had all
Mhm.
kinds of recognition events, all kinds of bowling nights and miniature golf and whatever, because I always realized I was that person who is now
Mhm.
working here. And the people
Mhm.
who came from a lot of C-level companies, you're trained not to repeat what you didn't like or appreciate. So when you break out on
Mhm.
your own, you can all those boundaries, all those limits are taken away. And it really, the saying, if it's going to be, it's up to me, is how bad do you want it? What are you willing to do to get it?
Yeah.
And at a
Right.
certain point, once you draw the line and say, hey, there's no backing up now. I mean, this is
Yeah.
it. I mean, no
Yeah.
doubt, no question. Megan?
Mhm. Yeah, when you were talking about getting to be there with your family and be there in the morning when your kids are going to school, and then later being able to take them out to lunch, I also feel like that's one of the things that's exactly what makes entrepreneurship so appealing and so interesting, and why it's really worth exploring for everyone, because it's like, what's your payoff? Your payoff is being with your family and being able to create that balance. Would a job have afforded you to do that? Maybe, but maybe not, and there would have been a lot of it just would have been different. And I think recognizing that those payoffs, that's what there's tremendous value for entrepreneurs who to recognize that payoff and then enjoy it and use it and take advantage of it. I think it can also, the slippery slope of that, Donald, and I think you've done a great job of it highlighting this, is making sure it doesn't become all consuming,
Mhm.
because it can very easily, because you sleep it, you eat it, you drink it, you live it, your family does. Like, my kids know about Tippy Toes, they know about my speaking, they know about any endeavors that I do. My kids are aware. We're in this together. Like, we're a family, we're all here. It can very easily turn into no boundaries. And I have probably had bouts of that along the journey where I was like, ooh, I'm a little out of balance. And the whole term of balance, I'm like, I think about balance in a macro. Like, on a given day, I might be leaning, it's not necessarily like 50-50, like, family life and work life. But overall, my weeks are pretty balanced. And I do things like, in my calendar, from 3 to 4 every day is blocked out. My kids come home, I'm not doing anything in that hour. Um, and a lot of times I avoid meetings anytime after 3 o'clock in the day, because my kids will be here and I can do other work, and I can reply to a quick email as I'm waiting for somebody to pick up from volleyball. But it's creating the boundaries as an entrepreneur is important. And then that also helps you want to continue doing it, because if you drive yourself into the ground, you're going to be burnt out really quickly. But if you enjoy, like what you were talking about, being there, like to take them to school, and being there to take them out to lunch, that's the payoff. And that's what really kind of, for me, it keeps me coming back for more. Being able, I took my kids lunch to school yesterday. That excites me. That makes me grateful every day that I was able to do that. And it makes me want to continue to do it, to live this entrepreneurship lifestyle.
Yeah, that's, and once you get that, you even have more reason to maintain that. And at a certain point, you honestly become unemployable, right? Once you've been in business for yourself, if someone said, "What'd you eat for breakfast?" I'm out of here. I don't need to answer. I mean, and the nice thing is you never have the guilt when you're working with somebody, because if someone's paying you and expecting somebody to say, "I'm going to take the afternoon off," you have a conflict of integrity where you say, "Hey, if I make a mistake, I'm paying for it if I'm not here." But here's the other element. I got to get back to the audience too.
Yes.
Is in order to get that freedom, you have to delegate more authority and responsibility to others, right? And now they're getting a benefit because they're rising up while they're allowing you to keep the balance. And the other thing, like any investor, any shareholder, and your family's a shareholder, your friends are shareholders, you name it. The more involved, the more invested they are, the more integrated, the better. When my kids were just old enough to 7, 8 years old, Ann would drop them off at the warehouse and where my office was. And it was like, "You're going to work today." And they didn't know what work was or anything. And what I used to do back then, we had all that green bar, full of those 100-page reports that, just kept spitting out from the printer. And I would just say, "Cross out all the 7s, right?" And they would actually go to work and they would present me with their work at the end. How many, did I miss any 7s? And they would tell their friends, "I'm doing work, I'm doing 7 work." They didn't know, but it was important.
Yeah.
And I was always excited, whatever they did. And it encouraged them that, working could be fun. Working could be something you get recognized for instead of being a 4-letter word that people avoid. So let's get back to Dennis, and then we'll cover the road less traveled is usually more scenic and creative. It's so easy for entrepreneurs to align and relate to other entrepreneurs. Russ says hello. Russ is come on in. D. Scott Smith, motivational listener. Paul comes back with, "Megan, I know you're so close with Sarah Blakely. I'm curious, what has been the most impact you learned from?" I got to meet her and Jesse at this year, and they're so down to earth. We can come back to that. Maria says, anyone else was LinkedIn being unstable? Yeah, I've been noticing that. Yesterday, a couple LinkedIn Lives weren't taking comments. So I'm glad this one is. And I actually am backed up with StreamYard because I'm starting to question putting too much dependency on one platform. Natalie says, "Great conversation. Love it. On our unwavering love for our mission and vision at the core of every thriving business. As entrepreneurs, we constantly evolve, and as we transform, so do our other offers, products, and essence of our company." I bet this is probably Carrie. "I recently read The Go-Giver, and this quote spoke to me. Your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. By giving more, you will grow more." And I think that's so important, because if your goal is greed, you're going to be out of balance from the get-go. If your goal is serving, bringing value, everybody who ever came to work for me, I would always tell them after I hired them, it's not how much you make here, it's who you become here, right? So get as good as you can. People would say, "I hate starting at the bottom." I said, "You're only there as long as you want to be, right? Start climbing, start getting more valuable."
So good.
Great point. And that's the thing, is being able to turn things back to people. Most people aren't responsive. They're not hearing. They're not listening. They're not encouraging. That's why entrepreneurship is scary, because it's about betting on yourself. Well, if you're going to work harder for somebody else than yourself, you should be working for someone else. And I always say, if you're going to put 8 hours in for a stranger, someone doesn't care about your family as much as you do, put 10 hours and be there for them. And how many birthdays, how many Little League games did you wish you could have went to? And I even had the offices 10 minutes from my house. So I could actually come home and no one would know I was even home and be back in 40 minutes if I wanted to see anything. And, when you're there for people, they remember that. It's sad to
Sure.
have a recital and no one from your family shows up, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
everybody knows, well, they're working, right? They
Mhm.
can't take off. As in a sense, but by definition, we see that small businesses usually deal with known and established products and service, while entrepreneurial ventures focus on new, innovative offerings, bit more risk looking. Well, I think anytime, let's move to Russ. Uh, Anytime you're the first one to choose, you're going to have the best advantage. I mean, just like location. If someone's already there, the next person coming has that advantage of taking over. Check out my newsletter. Great. It's in comments, I'm sure. Ashif is from Toronto. Great person. Hello, Leslie Flowers. Lovely sessions. Went overtime. Glad to be here. Yeah, Leslie's here. She'll be here Saturday. She's just great with Think and Grow Rich on Friday. She has another show, Mind Over Matter, on Mondays. Uh, Always happy to promote it. Leslie, lovely session. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, that's a little bit technical. Elizabeth, who was here yesterday, did so great. Natalie comes back with, got to run. Have a great rest of your week. Great to meet you, Megan. I sent a connection. Great, great.
Mhm.
Elizabeth, you're the tippy toes lady. Nice to meet you, Megan. Maybe really quickly, you can share what is Tippy Toes for those who want a little bit more context, Megan.
Sure. Yes. So Tippy Toes, it's a children's dance company that we started in 1999. And what we do is we go into daycares and preschools and we offer dance classes on site. So families and parents can pick up their kiddo at the end of the day and they've had Tippy Toes. They're learning choreography, but more importantly, they're building confidence. They're learning a new skill. They're, being loved and cared for by their Tippy Toes teacher. And so my sister actually started in college. I joined her a few years later. And so we continued to just build it really organically for years. And in 2009, we started franchising it. And now we have nearly 40 franchises in the US. We have a master franchise in China. So now my days, I went from, teaching dance in my college days to now, I spend my days helping business owners, new franchisees come in, build their business, in their own city, in their own community, and it's so much fun. And we're growing quite a bit right now, and it's just a really wonderful space. I'm really proud of it. Made it through COVID, which was really important to us because families were like, we need Tippy Toes. We don't want to lose you in this time, and we figured out how to pivot through that. And it's been a journey. We've been at it since 1999. So, we started as kids with no clue what we were doing and, just kept trying to do the next most important thing. And here we are. So I am the Tippy Toes lady. So is my sister, Sarah Noose. But I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So it's nice to meet you. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, and I think what's important, because even when I started my business and we only had enough inventory for weekends, so my newspaper ad would be open to the public Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it'd be like wholesale prices or whatever. And I used to actually ask for empty boxes on the way out. Somebody would buy a wrench set and they'd have a box, and I'd say, if you're throwing it away, just give it to me. I'll take care of it. And I put the box behind a full one, and then it looked like I had two. And even tools, it's not like cabbages or radishes. Nobody wants your last one. So by having a backup, and you learn little things, and you find everybody could have some value if you have the time. Being in retail is like, I'm there until I leave, right? So anybody coming in is better than nobody being in. And they weren't even a buyer. I would just say, well, how'd you hear about us? Where do you work? I'll take some cards back with you. I'll put my name on it. If they come in, I'll take care of you. You do whatever it takes to get it done. And when you don't know anything, you're open to everything. And there's things that educated, experienced people would never touch that entrepreneurs now find is the time, the technology that makes it real again. And believe that if no one can do it, you can still do it. Because part of entrepreneurship, I remember when we first opened, everybody came in. And the only people came in was the competition. and they were telling me, "You are not going to make it here. This isn't going to work." And they were right, but I changed over
Mhm.
time to make it work.
Mhm.
And that was my
Mhm.
first, like, building clay. And if you look
Yes.
at the stage you're in, it's like, hey, we're just playing with clay here, not a lot of expense,
Mhm.
not a lot of risk, and we have nobody to offend. The
Mhm.
Google founders later on had an interview, and they said, we were so awful in the beginning. We were so happy no one knew about us at that point, right? When
Mhm.
people got to
Mhm.
know us, we were actually pretty proficient. And I think you
Mhm.
want to go out on stage unless you've taken it off, to Connecticut for
Mhm.
or Broadway. And if you,
Mhm.
I always looked at either you're learning or you're earning, one or the other.
Mhm.
Elizabeth said,
Mhm.
3 to 4 to be present with my son. Yeah, I mean, you only have so much time, and as older you get, the more less time you have, but the more you look back at what was the value of your time. Where do you get your
Mhm.
most happiness? And when you're doing great, people who love you and care about you feel great that you're doing great. It's one less person to worry about, one more person to be proud of. So it's not just you, it's you and everybody
Mhm.
that surrounds you. Maria, entering into entrepreneurship is like preparing for a war. To me, it's exciting. I mean, I love, and when I don't, I always look at failure as feedback, right?
Mhm.
So it's not failure. What do I learn from this? What do I change because? And the bigger the hit, the stronger the
Mhm.
lesson that you don't want to ever repeat. I have such vast experience working in New York City, Wall Street, and now the Netherlands. I'm finding it difficult to fine tune my message and narrow down. That's why these shows are so good because they're thought provoking. They mix things up. You can allow yourself to optimize certain things. I would appreciate hearing how either you made quantum leaps in your growing. Sometimes it happens to you. In my case, of all the things I did, Walmart.com calling me up or messaging me and say I was chosen as one of the first 6 companies to start their marketplace. And it was myself, Wayfair, eBags, ShoeBuy, and I couldn't believe it.
That's so cool.
And they chose me. I didn't even know I was in the running. They had already
That's
done the
awesome.
search. And
But here's the thing with that is you were there. You were playing the game. If you weren't playing the game, you wouldn't have gotten the call. So you like I think that lesson is it in my opinion. Like you were trying, you were playing, you were approaching, you were putting your hat in the ring. And because of that, this thing happened to you. It didn't happen to you. You put yourself in a position for it to happen to you. And I think that's when you look back, you're like, interesting. Like that you made that happen. You weren't seeking it out, but because of the work you were doing, it came your way.
one, and because of how I was doing it, because that was a great question that I asked them, was why
Mm-hmm.
me? Because I wasn't the
Mm-hmm.
biggest,
Mm-hmm.
by any means. But they said
Mm-hmm.
because you're always on the cutting edge of technology. You're always doing new innovative things, and we want to align with companies. A lot of times you got big
Mm-hmm.
companies who are dated, aren't up to it. And I was willing to do anything. And what was weird, when I took it to all my tech people, and it was going to be a 6-month project just to get to their level of proficiency to be onboarded, right? You had agreed
Mm-hmm.
to 99.5% delivery and this and that. They assigned 5, 6 people of their own it every week and then brought a person on site every week with our team to coordinate this. And everybody was, we're spending so many hours, we're spending so much time. This is costing us so much money. And other initiatives are, I said, this is Walmart.com. What are we talking
Mm-hmm.
about? You're not going to get any better. And one of 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
after the
Yeah.
first year, we were the only one could sell anything. Everybody else was
Mm-hmm.
restricted to a
Fascinating.
category. I eventually got 700,000 a day items being listed with no inventory. So, anyways,
Incredible. Yeah.
it was just working an opportunity and getting ahead of
Mm-hmm.
it and getting with it.
Yeah. I would say there are 2 quantum leaps that I could think of for us. One was getting on Shark Tank. That was, and I would say not because we got all these deals, but because the credibility you get when you are you are tied to certain things or people. Somebody mentioned Sarah Blakely. It's not like we're braiding each other's hair. We're not best friends, but I've gotten to interact with her a few times. I've interviewed her mom for my podcast. I've seen her at multiple events. Like, we will message each other. We'll text each other sometimes. People think that I am, will associate me with her, which is a compliment, but like, and Shark Tank is the same thing. Like, you get tied to certain things, and it creates credibility. And I'm the same person, whether I was on Shark Tank or whether I've, become friendly with Sarah Blakely. I'm the same person, but from the outside, that helps. So, I mean, that's just the reality of perception matters. And so that's helped. And that all happened, Shark Tank, we submitted an application. I didn't even do it. My brother-in-law did it, didn't tell my sister and I, and that just happened. So but that has helped. But the more tactical thing that can be done for me, Quantum Leaps came from hiring great people and having people that helped us move faster. For many years, it was just Sarah and I, because we were wanting to be moms and wanted it to kind of be a certain way, very organic, probably smaller. And then we were like, we want to grow, we want to scale, we want to go bigger and faster. And so it was time to bring in people that could help us do that. So specifically to answer that question, part of it is perception and who you're aligned with. And then the other one is getting really great people around you to help push that vision and mission forward.
Yeah, and that saying, be known before you're needed, is so important. And how you do things attracts people like you. And integrity is key. Doing things a little bit more service oriented, makes a difference, because people who really are at a high level appreciate a lot of things and look for things that wouldn't be in the average, how do I make more profit on this, right? And everything is stages. Let's just cover, don't be afraid your life will end, be afraid that will never begin. Grace Hanson, so nice, Ashif. Maria comes back with, what is the best way to get engagement on LinkedIn post? Well, I think this is the best. LinkedIn Lives get 24 times the comments as organic video, which is 5 times more than text post. So if you're doing a text post, you're going to have to do 120 of them supposedly to make one LinkedIn Live appearance. And what do you do in that time? Because this is people talking back and forth. With a post, it's like the Pony Express. You drop it off, you pick it up later. It's a bunch of other people who you have to filter through. It's not efficient. But if that's all there was, it's better than what wasn't. Now with this, it's like I don't go back. Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, I was going to say one thing. The LinkedIn Live, I think, is fascinating, and all those stats are super encouraging and inspiring to push everyone towards it. I don't do that at this point on my page, but a friend of mine, Darren McKee, who's a very active and wonderful person on LinkedIn, recently told me something that I have noticed helped my engagement on my posts, and that is engaging before you post. It's a very tactical, strategic thing, but I was like, I've noticed that as I get on because I used to engage after or later in the day, but I engage now before I post, and then I post, and then I've noticed a little bit of an uptick in engagement. But to Donald's point, that it's hard to beat the numbers of a LinkedIn Live.
Well, and, in addition, if you are posting, a way to really get more interaction is adding a poll. Right? Because, you're going to you have the choice how specific. The more specific, the more relevant the answer. The more general, the more quantity of the response. So, the best poll I ever did was how many connections do you have? And, 0 to 3,000, 3 to 8, because that's an easy question. Or how many years have you been on LinkedIn? Or is LinkedIn your number one social media channel? But that's some relevancy. But when I actually say, would you be interested in my new class? And 20 people say yes instead of 200. And then I could say, well, thank you for responding to the poll. If you'd like more information or set up a call, happy to do so. But again, that's inbound creating outbound. Anybody look at my profile, if they're relevant, I'll go back and say, thanks for taking the time to view my profile. I see this, blah, blah, blah. But now one more benefit is traditionally someone you'll connect with and you'll have a Zoom call. and you might admire everything about them and what they're doing, but you realize at the end of the call, there's nothing you can do with them, with what
Mhm.
you're doing and what they're doing. So it ends with, if I know somebody or something changes. But if you have a LinkedIn live show and you reach out to somebody and say, I think you'd be a great guest host on my show, right?
Mhm.
And you get to know people in front of people,
Mhm.
it's easier to then, let's say, identify the people you really want to get to know, but do it more on a colleague level than a reaching
Mhm.
up and, I saw this, I could use, whatever the case. How you feel about how you're approached is how other people feel about how they're approached. And if you put the other person first, and just like it's an employee, right? Just like if it's a supplier,
Mhm.
what can you do to show more respect, more sincere appreciation for that person's
Mhm.
that they're not used to getting, right? And people gravitate to where they can feel they're going to be better recognized, better rewarded, and better heard.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
and that's where coaching comes in. That's why not enter a program where, that's where I'm taking this is great for mindset, interaction, knowledge share. But I think
Mhm.
Megan's point earlier is, what are you doing to put it in action? What is holding
Mhm.
you back from taking even the smallest step? And usually
Mhm.
collaboration, groups help because everybody's braver when they're with 10
Mhm.
other people. And when other
Sure.
people are vulnerable and sensitive and sharing, and it's a safe spot, it gives people that opportunity to share. I've
Mhm.
got an idea. I'd like to bounce it around here, or I'm dealing with a question or concern. And why not have that regular benefit? Because again, one-on-ones are too time expensive for anybody over time. They don't scale. But if
Mhm.
90% of your knowledge applies to 90% of your audience, why not take 1 hour with 30 people and have that brainstorming, knowledge sharing, whatever it is? And that gives
Mhm.
you a boost. And, it's almost like having a fractional organization, right? Before you
Mhm.
hire someone or engage somebody, you can kind of get a nice consensus around that. Uh, uh, Elizabeth comes back with talk about the problem and the results. I always look at attitude. If you go into anything thinking the worst, you're going to get it. If you think the best, you'll probably receive it. So, what your experience is in the past does not define what your future experience can be.
Mhm.
Some things get you to where you are, they're not going to take you where you want to go. And sometimes you
Mhm.
change where you want to go based on circumstances. Coming up on the top of the hour, Megan, this thing goes so quickly because the guests are just hard to keep up with, the audience. So what's your final thoughts on the show and the word entrepreneur?
Oh, I love it. Thank you for inviting me and having me. And I loved all the questions and hope we got to everything. But it was great to see new faces and glad that hopefully you guys connected and I'll find it all afterwards, probably after we get off of this. Um, I I think that, like I said in the beginning, I think for me, entrepreneurship is a wonderful fit for me in my life, my personality, and I think it's a fit for a lot of people. Even if it's not, there's lessons that you can learn from the mindset of an entrepreneur that can really help anyone reach their goals. And I think at the end of the day, we all have a desire to hit our goals, no matter what those might be, whether they're physical or professional or personal. When there's a few things that I think are key. One is knowing that all the tools are within you. Every single one of us has the capability to tap into certain special things that only you have that can serve you. I think that's really important. Being mindful of your focus. Where are you putting your energy? We've got to be careful about where we're putting our energy. And again, whether you're a business owner or not, that can apply. Understanding you have unique value. Sometimes because our talents and our capabilities are so natural to us, we don't think that they're special. But the truth is it's incredibly special to someone else. I cannot sew a button on a pair of pants. I can't do it. I don't know what I'm doing when I do it. I just go back and forth a whole bunch of times, tie a knot, and I'm like, I have no idea I don't know how to hem. I can't do that. Blows my mind that someone can like create a garment. Well, somebody that can sew on a button is like, that's not a big deal. But to me, it's incredible. So understand that you have your own, and that applies to entrepreneurship or just even someone that can use that mindset. And then I also think it's really important that we develop a mindset to know that it's not these high highs and these low lows. Don't try to ride every high and every low. Just try to enjoy the process, metabolize the wins, like experience the wins and learn something, experience the losses and learn something, but keep that momentum going forward. And that mindset, I think, can apply to someone that's building a business or someone that just wants to reach their goals in life. So I think those kind of few takeaways are really key for an entrepreneur mindset, which I think is very important. And I think it's also really important to know that the first step can be tiny, but if you just get in the habit of trying, then you never really know what could be on the other end of all those tries.
Yeah, I think you really are a wonderful example of entrepreneurship, have a great success story and share it with enthusiasm. And, in a lot of ways, we've kind of overcome enough to be on the other side now. It's like a snowball. It takes forever to get to the top. On the way down, you can't stop it. And knowing everybody can be just like myself or Megan, we're nothing special. We could have taken a left instead of a right, and we wouldn't be talking about this today. And there is something to opportunity, and there's something to timing. And what I learned is don't make something responsible for something that it isn't. So if someone's got a big overhead, it's not the business overhead that's responsible for it. And, so I would advise minimizing where you can when you start, so you don't put too much pressure on time or on money. And, it's like a plant. You can't just plant a seed and harvest it the next day. Really got to consider cultivating it, nourishing it, taking care of it. A business is like a baby when it launches. It's sensitive, it's fragile, it needs all kinds of attention. And if you give it that, it will grow in a healthy way. And I think that's why so many people start and stop, that they thought it was a lottery ticket. There's one last thing I'll say. When you do something entrepreneurial, the first day your energy and excitement is at the highest level it's ever going to be at, and your knowledge level is at the lowest. Until your knowledge goes up to match your excitement coming back to reality, you're going to be out of business, right? Because without knowing anymore, without being able to change anything, you'll just decide, hey, it sounded good. And you know what? It was more than sounding good, but it took you not being the boss, not being an owner because of your misperception of it. So I think get real, get low, and expect everything to take longer and cost more than you ever anticipated, and factor that in. And it's not that you need more, except you need more patience and perseverance, knowing if it's going to take 6 months, I got 3 more months to get to 6 months. And what do I got to do now that I didn't do in the first 3 to correct? And it's like climbing a mountain. It's not a straight line. You pivot here, you have a base camp there. Anyways, we're way over 3 minutes. With that, I want to thank everybody so much for being here, especially Megan, and look forward to having everybody come back tomorrow. Kelly will be here, and it only gets better. So with that said, thank you, Megan. Thank you, everyone.